Selected people, as soon as you were able to escape, the curse set in. It was a poisoned promise etched into every dark alleyway and dilapidated roadway. This was more than just hostility. It was a communal fury that burned beyond good sense and beyond sympathy. You had to turn a whole city against yourself if you wanted to live. A fury that was inimical to reason was seething in the town. The fact that you survived was an insult, since it violated its most sacred unwritten rule. Sidewalks trembled with the incitement of deadly intent, and windows became watchful eyes. Every step you made was an attempt to overcome a darkness that would not let go, and every breath you drew was a crime. The city will never forgive you since you managed to get away. They used a lot of artificial light in their ceremonies. Their daggers were veiled as compassion, and you were baptized in shame. Claiming it was mending, they tried to murder you in plain sight. You knew about it, didn't you? The confused spells, the murmurs that made you wonder who your own name was. With grins on their faces, they worked in circles. Each one of their prayers was a hidden curse, and each one of their embraces was a trap. They wanted your identity to completely dissolve into theirs, not just your body. They wanted your resolve to disintegrate and your voice to falter. They performed a surgical act in addition to a spiritual one. In total stillness, they planned to extract your soul and sew it back together. This was deliberate warfare, not only envy. They believed that since you were lonely, curious, and kind, you would make the perfect lamb. The altar they brought forth was you. They put you through sorcerous, humiliating procedures that they believed you would shatter. These rituals, which were performed in secret, featured AIDS, HIV, energy that was decaying from the inside out, curses that were meant to cause you to collapse, and spells of confusion that changed your reflection. Everything in your life, your food, your clothes, your dreams, was the result of rude effort. What they gave you was poisoned, empty hands, and fake love. After all, it was anticipated that your breakdown would occur in a humiliating and public way. From then on, everything stopped. When their spells clashed with an unknown power, the godly uttered the words, "Access denied." They watched how the whole cosmos responded after being flung at you. You did more than just make it through. You really made things better for yourself. They tried to poison your heart, but you managed to preserve it intact. Your voice got more louder despite their efforts to muffle it. They tried to make you forget who you were, but their rituals only succeeded in making you forget who you were. Your ancestors' bones refused to turn on him, so you can be certain they stood up. They set fire to every mask, broke every illusion, and pulled you out of every pit. The divine enveloped you in a thunderous cloud as they came to claim your crown. Everything they built was destroyed, according to your family tree. Not this one. Every shrine they built in your honor was smashed, every mirror was shattered, and every curse that was shouted was returned to its sender with interest. They failed in their endeavor to sacrifice you. If you affirm these words by writing Amen, God will provide you with all the desires you desire in your life throughout your existence. In order to serve you better, we have activated our Join membership. You can buy this membership for only $20 and become a permanent part of this community. There was never just one. They were not a single person. It was a network stitched together with familiarity and crocheted in quiet. Former pals who abruptly lost interest in you, relatives who began treating you as if you were a complete stranger, enemies who seemed to be merely checking in, and ex-friends who appeared with phony excuses and sinister intentions. These events were organized assaults rather than isolated incidents. Even the city itself was a spiritual trap. Every handshake is a hex, and every embrace is a data mine. They were collecting pieces of you, and they were disassembling you methodically. The collective plot was not based only on animosity or nefarious gossip. Now these people were containers, and something old, broken, and resentful passed through them. And they were no longer humans. They acted as if they were concerned, But they were really simply executioners using empathy as a pretext. They wove charms wrapped in Bible texts, whispered prayers to gods they could not understand, and cloaked their jealousy in a protective mask while they sat in circles. This had little to do with helping you ascend, but rather with pulling you back down into the chasm they called home. Allow your love to show if God's gifts fill your heart to overflowing. Give $20 or more by clicking the Super Thanks button to help sow the seeds of faith that will change the lives of countless others. His riches is reflected in your giving. Serve as a conduit for His grace and see His kingdom grow via you. The city was indicated while you were feeling as if you were walking on neutral territory. They carried out ceremonies that were engraved into the earth, rather than being just secret. Every single betrayal left a trace, and every untruth left a scar. Remorse permeates the buildings and the walkways, and the echoes of spells can be heard on the pavements. The earth itself is greatly outraged by what they did to you on the land. It grieves both physically and spiritually for the brightness that they tried to extinguish. That was where you were supposed to die. The town was supposed to be your graveyard at first, but the grave has now turned on its builders. They are now imprisoned in what was once your imprisonment. The very land they condemned is now cursing them. Once again, their secrets will not be buried, and their murmurs will not be kept secret. The surface of normality is starting to crumble, revealing rot and spiritual decay underneath that which no amount of denial can cure. At this point, they exchange dubious glances. They feel as if the earth is abandoning them. Feelings of revenge, humiliation, and guilt permeate the environment. You were able to escape, and you stopped their ritual in the process. You brought the spell to light by your deliverance, not through your words. Moreover, the shadow they formerly cast after you has now shifted inside. They have called forth the darkness and are now imprisoned in it. That's what you did wrong. You didn't bow. You shouldn't have been such an idiot. It was a bad idea for you to join the coven. You ought not to have kissed the ring of false leaders who relied only on trickery to gain power. You didn't wear their mask. You didn't say their catchphrases. And you didn't compromise your integrity for acceptance. Under the guise of community, they offered you power, but you turned them down. More impactful than any statement was the rejection of that rejection. It was enough that you just stood in your own light. There was nothing you had to say. They realized they had lost their spirit, their faith, and their purpose as they looked into you. For them, you were a mirror. They hated you for that reason. It was not your light that accentuated their shadows, but that exposed them. And the fear of being revealed was their worst fear. They used titles, traumatize, illusions, and unspoken agreements to build their power. However, your sincerity threw everything off balance. You only survived, and that is the reality. It is unacceptable that you did not compete. Nothing was ever meant for you to survive, much less thrive. Your presence was meant to be a warning and an example for others to follow if they decide to oppose you. However, who do they believe they are now that independence has been shown to be achievable? They whispered to one another. However, it was a challenge rather than a question. They cursed you with their skepticism, their hostility, and their envy because you didn't crash when they tried to destroy you. You didn't scream for scraps of affection when they denied it to you. You didn't return to plead for pardon for just being there. You came not to be pardoned. You disappeared and never came back. You turned into the story they tried to conceal, and they can't stop talking about your name. You were dangerous because of your tranquility. You weren't dangerous because of your disobedience. It was a mystery to them how you kept standing, how you kept smiling, and how you kept healing. Then they brought storms and you built boats. You became rain when they threw fire at you. You have come to depend entirely on the divine, even though you were meant to need them. Through your deeds, you exposed the true hollowness of their authority. You were guided here. You didn't just stumble here. You should not disregard any stirring in your soul. Press join to have access to prophetic insights, unique material, and a community of like-minded individuals. This is your moment of alignment, not just a membership. Be the person you were meant to be. Greetings from the selected, because you were the reminder, the one they couldn't destroy, the one who got away. You became the object of their wrath. Furthermore, they are forced to face the lie they have already reconciled with every time they see you gleaming. You rediscovered who you were instead of acting defiantly. Why did they decide to turn you against them? After then, there is a little break in the video to show if you were chosen or not, but the transcript goes on. They are hidden away in stillness, yet it is not silence, but despair. They spy under the pretense of assistance, using energy measurements, mutual connections, and fake accounts. Even if it's only to confirm that they've failed. They want an update, so they send messengers. Why their curses didn't work? Why you seem lighter and why the clock of karma hit them instead? They need an explanation. Type Amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. Not only did the spell work fail, but it returned with a fury. Instead of seeing you decay, as they had anticipated, they are seeing themselves fall apart. They came up with a complicated scheme to degrade them. You were meant to be the town's joke, the failure that was murmured about in the background and mocked at behind closed doors. They prepared the mockery, carefully orchestrated your fall, and perfectly timed the public humiliation. Then again, something was different. They are now the ones hiding since the magic was reversed. Their names are being murmured pityingly. Their very own spirits are restless, and their very own coven is discussing them. Karma is presently writing fresh punchlines with their faces up on stage, since the joke didn't work. They nonetheless keep watching in the hopes that the activity would slow down. They think that after staring at you for a certain period of time, your glow would fade, but it will really intensify. Additionally, they get more cursed the more deeply they concentrate. They cannot stop you from becoming a sermon, and your silence speaks louder than any retort they could offer, not because of what you did, but rather because of what they were unable to do to you. Their obsession has caused them to become afflicted. Don't keep it to yourself if God's kindness has touched you. To help spread His light, click Super Thanks and make a contribution of at least $20. Your generosity spreads like a wave of kindness, transforming hearts and advancing His kingdom. Allow His excess to flow through you. It is impossible for them to move on from you since your survival was a prophetic event, rather than just a personal one. You are without a doubt the one thing they are most afraid of. They look at you with shame in every single one of their glances. They are still monitoring you, but you are invincible. Their objective was to pursue your heart, because they knew that your soul was protected and your intellect was strong. All along, it was the correct objective. They gave you companions who were really shadows, offered friendships that were soaked in poison and honey, and murmured beautiful spells that were passed off as signs of love. It was more important for them to ruin your delicate nature than to kill your body. It is impossible to hear divinity with a hardened heart. They believed that if they could shut down your heart, they could also cut off your link to the truth. That was the plan to execute an emotional murder. But trauma spells were shattered before they had a chance to work, like rotting fruit in the light, and love spells failed. Clearly, the fake friendships were on show. They tried to emotionally tie you, wrap you in guilt, and bound you with pity in an attempt to rewrite your sense of value via manipulation and neglect. They thought you would stop loving yourself if they were successful in making you feel unlovable. But instead, your heart caught fire instead of giving way. You were able to see right through everything, even the performance and the meaningless glances and embraces. You were not stupid. and you remained kind. That was what saved your life. Your heart becomes your defensive mechanism in addition to surviving. They found enlightenment where they expected agony. You established boundaries where they planned to plant seeds of animosity. Additionally, this made them fearful because a heart that remains light in the midst of a world that is trying to shatter it is impregnable. They wanted to see you have an emotional collapse, but they saw your holy clarity instead. You elevated your heart to a higher plane rather than shutting it. You acquired the capacity to bless and block in the same word, to forgive without expecting anything in return, and to love something from a distance. The holy scale of weight is about to be used. Every ceremony they conducted, every betrayal they orchestrated, and every lie they swallowed were all measured against your innocence. The cosmos is incapable of forgetting. The Most High is really unbiased, even though it does not favor anybody. They have a heavy one, whereas yours is as light as a feather. You didn't curse them. You didn't choose to exact retribution. Simply said, their spirit was choking on dirt while you were able to keep yours pure. This is the reason why the judgment is coming down on them swiftly and forcefully. It turns out that your heart was the one thing they couldn't touch, even though they thought they could break it. That's the only reason you're still standing. They are disintegrating as a result. Before you realized it was set up, they could already see the trap beginning to take form. Your forebears were unfazed by anything. They stood tall in areas that were out of sight, their eyes centuries old, observing every setup, every spell, every snake move. These were warriors, guardians, and lineage generals who would not let you fall prey. It was not a matter of passive spirits speaking words of love and light. They even changed timelines to rescue you from a hole you didn't know you were falling into, and stopped bullets from striking you that you didn't know were coming. Before the blade ever touched your flesh, they were pulling you away. They had never experienced this before, when you had the urgent want to ghost, to run away, or to pull away from the circumstance. The principles of safety and holiness have been ingrained in your family lineage. These ancestors were allocated to you throughout your lifetime, in addition to being associated with you. They understood the seriousness of the situation, because you are bearing heavenly vows and holy blood. They watched as the community surrounded you with a group of fake friends dressed like sheep. Additionally, they chuckled when the last spell was done, since they knew it would never work. Every altar that was set up against you was burnt by divine fire, and spiritual flames destroyed every jar buried in your name. Then the archangels entered the picture. Gabriel sounded the trumpet as a kind of judgment, as well as a preventative measure. While their sleep was disturbed and their peace disturbed, your enemies woke up to the sound of an unceasing ringing. The reality that this one bears light echoed across every realm they tried to control, and Gabriel said in his speech, "This one is marked." Michael took the blade out of its sheath. Every time they attacked your happiness, your voice, or your breath, he was there to defend you with heavenly rage, cutting ropes that they tried to tie and shutting doors that they thought would engulf you. His presence set the spiritual battlefield on fire, not with retaliation, but with bombs. Raphael showed up on the spot. Each time they tried to use sorrow as a weapon against him, Raphael fixed it. Since mending is a power rather than a passive process, he solidified every betrayal that was meant to leave you scarred. Every effort to use your compassion against you was tallied by him. Raphael ensured that your injuries were turned into assets rather than vulnerabilities. Your spiritual squad stood guard over you like a fortress, keeping you safe. You were never left alone, in addition to being safeguarded. Even if you couldn't see it, the plan was being spoken to you. Your emotions were being diverted, and the truth was being illuminated. That strange dream, that instinct, that sudden want to distance oneself from someone, all of these are ways of protecting oneself. In actuality, they were always fighting against your support rather than against you. What if your assistants were divine, age-old, and unreachable? You were crowned, covered, and carried on your journey to survival. You did not survive by chance.